or he's merely referring to, well, it's not like we've got geniuses right now, right? And we spoke at length, and we left it at that. Little did I know that that day he had planted a seed in me, and a seed, I guess, had spawned off. And when he got in touch with me last year and he said, "Now, let's do this. We don't have a political background. We don't know how politicians talk, how politicians think, but we know what they do, and we have seen, if left unchecked, how much trouble and damage they can create." Our winning factor is that now you really don't care for politics. You care more about the well-being of the country's citizens. Else you wouldn't have quit your high-flying job as a software engineer to dedicate your life to people that sometimes can never ever pay you. You take joy in that. And that's one. Number two, as a software engineer and as an entrepreneur, you've had to figure out a lot of things on how you're going to get your next meal. Something as basic as that. Where is your next 100 rand coming from to make that meeting? You've learned how to solve these problems by yourself, and you've learned to be self-reliant without asking anybody for money. And you've gone on and you've taught other people how to do the same thing. Imagine if we can put this to a national scale where no young person, or nobody for that matter, is held ransom in South Africa and afraid to call BS what it is, simply because they are afraid they are going to lose their grant. So now, you've got brilliant ideas. You've practically done this. Let's join up. Well, he didn't have to do that much convincing. I think he only spoke for a minute. The rest of this conversation was happening in my head. And I was like, sure, let's do it. But more than anything, when you have spent a good 10 years with somebody building a relationship, you get to know their true character. A lot of people have come to me with proposals of partnerships or let's work together. And quite a number of them, I've turned them down. Not because their ideas were not great, but simply because their character and their principles just were not right for me. So even if Kempton at the time had not thought through everything, but the man that he is, the character and the principles and the sacrifices and the contribution that I have seen him for a good 10 years, the contributions that he had been making towards changing the lives of so many people in South Africa, told me that this is a man I could trust, and I could bring my ideas to the front, and we'd hash them out, and we really could change South Africa. And there couldn't have been a better time where every single South African right now says, don't come and tell me about what that party has done. Don't come and tell me about who's corrupt. We all know that. Tell us how you're going to fix South Africa. And I can tell you that has been the biggest thing on almost every young person I've engaged with, saying, we want a party that can come and say, look, we all know what is wrong, and this is how we propose we are going to fix it. So here's to fix in South Africa, and to thank all of you here, and to really assure you that I've never started or gotten involved in anything and left it along the way. I have a very addictive personality. All right, so we are in this for the long haul. be it a seat, be it 2 seats, be it no seats, this is only the beginning. And we will be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, getting stronger each and every single day. I thank you all.
Thank you, Neo. Neo is always a much better speaker than I am, but I've always been asked to be an MC for some reason. So, anyway, let me introduce Mr. Kanthan Pillay himself, known as the chairman, or as we call him, Chief Beef. Kanthan.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The point around this evening, understand that in terms of the rules that are laid down by the IEC, we are not allowed to campaign 24 hours before the election. So I want to be very clear that we are not here campaigning. The purpose for gathering here this evening really is to say thank you. And the number of people that I need to thank is just so absolutely huge that I have no idea really where to start. But I'm going to really try my best to go through it. Neo has spoken to some extent about this crazy idea that we had, which traced itself back several months ago to playing a more meaningful role in terms of shaping the future of our country. We realized that politics is too important to be left to politicians, and it's about time that we injected people into the mix that were actually capable of making real decisions in terms of how our money is spent, because ultimately it is our money. All of us who are gathered here actually fund this country and make everything possible. And I don't think that any one of us who are gathered here today would turn around and say that we really don't want to pay taxes that are going to uplift our country. I think all of us would take the view that yes, we do want our country to prosper, and yes, we do want a more just society. But I think all of us, without exception, are very clear that the way in which our money gets spent has to give us value for money. And fundamentally, when that money is being spent, it must not be a sinkhole where we are constantly pouring money down without seeing a return on investment. Because all of us, in our day-to-day lives, I'd like to think we expect to see a return on investment. So the starting point was pulling on board 2 people that I absolutely trusted. Roman and Neo were the first who came together with me, and we set out to look for like-minded people. We did not have a clue at the time where these people were going to come from, how we were going to find them. But the crucial thing that we were aware of was that there were core principles that were drawing us together. So we were not interested in outcomes. I think that the outcomes in terms of how a society actually shapes itself is drawn from the principles by which you try to run the society. And far too often in this country, we have tried to work towards the outcomes by trying to retrofit our principles to fit them, and that never works. So the 10 principles are what really drew us together, and that was the point at which we started looking for the other people that we could actually pull on board. And essentially, we said, let us go out and actually find these people. The really difficult thing for us as business people trying to pull an initiative like this together is that successful business people don't really want to give up what they are doing on a day-to-day basis and start an entirely new career in politics. I mean, well, imagine, for example, that you happen to be a very successful surgeon. Would you be prepared to, at the peak of your career, give up saving people's lives on a day-to-day basis and suddenly take up a career in politics? And I think the same is true for everything that actually requires intellectual capital. But the side effect of that is that we end up with the worst possible people running our country. We end up with people who are unemployable in other fields, and that's how they end up in parliament. So the type of people that we had to end up looking for were people like ourselves who actually run businesses, but we are able to step back from those businesses, allow those businesses to run themselves while we do community service in Parliament. And slowly but surely, we managed to find 10 absolutely fantastic people to come on board and to share this vision with us and to actually make themselves available for election. So our premise was very simple: 10 core principles, 10 plans of action, 10 people to get into Parliament and to make a difference on an ongoing basis. So the first people that I really need to start thanking are the people who are on my team, the candidates who stepped forward, in spite of the fact that this meant that we all had to put our careers on hold for the 6 months or so that we've been working on this, and to actually allow us to focus on turning this party into something amazing. I think if any of you actually stop to consider that we are 6 weeks old, it is only 6 weeks since we launched. We launched on the 17th of March. And suddenly, from a party that was completely unknown at the point at which the final deposits were paid to the IEC to contest the election, and suddenly 2 days thereafter, there we announce ourselves right here at this very Rand Club. And it was thanks to the fact that all 10 of us were able to come together and make this thing happen. Then there were a number of people who worked behind the scenes fairly tirelessly at the point at which we were getting ready to launch, who also came on board. I'd like to single out Stan. Where's Stan? Stan has been, please stand up, Stan. Stan has been kind of tireless in terms of driving our social media efforts in terms of Facebook. Where's Sebastian? Sebastian, where are you hiding? Please make yourself known. Sebastian is taking a smoke break. Well, I think it's a well-earned smoke break. But again, Sebastian was providing legal oversight, essentially going through our constitution to ensure that it was drawn up appropriately, and more importantly, using his enthusiasm for this Rand Club that we happen to be at as a place that we used for our launch. And we're using again today, thanks to the fact that he is such a trusted member of this establishment. Wogan May is not present, and he's the person who single-handedly designed and put together our new website and did an absolutely brilliant job at relatively short notice. Who have I left out, Raman? Don't mess with my narrative. Who else have I left out? Well, yeah, I'm not going to give Raman credit that he doesn't necessarily deserve at this point. But the person who single-handedly, more than anything else, has been responsible for the success that we've had to date is my wife, Sarah, my utterly brilliant wife. When we first came up with the idea for the Capitalist Party, and at that time, Sarah was just about to quit her job. You know, she had been, her ad agency had been merged with another ad agency, and she decided that she'd had enough of the corporate world and was going to go out on her own. And she said, "What are you working on?" And I said, "Well, we're starting a political party. And, you know, it's the Capitalist Party. And right now, a preliminary logo, we've actually just put together a fan fold of all of our currency notes." And she said, "No, that's a terrible idea. It needs to be a purple cow." And then she proceeded to draw the purple cow, which you see right now, which we then ended up gazetting in October of last year, which was the point at which we declared the intent to the world that we were starting a political party. And thank goodness our media in this country is generally so unconscious of what's going on in the real world that they did not notice this purple cow popping up in the government gazette. And everything since then was designed around building the purple cow as a symbol that could actually pull every single one of us together. It was a purple cow because cattle is the symbol of wealth in our continent. I think for the majority of people in our country, you can't get married unless you have access to cattle. It also, from the point of view of the stock exchange, represents a bull market for us, and purple is the color of prosperity, purple is the color of royalty. It's all good things that we want for our country. And Sarah drew the purple cow, and then designed the entire strategy around how, when we finally get to the point tomorrow, when we stand alone in that booth, in the silence, and only our conscience and that pen in front of us, that purple cow is going to leap out at us on that ballot paper. And it's going to be really difficult for people to not notice that that purple cow is there. So to all of my fellow candidates who are not here with us this evening, because obviously we spread around the globe. Duncan MacLeod cast his vote for us before leaving the country yesterday, so he was a special vote. I don't need to tell you how he voted. And Unati is currently watching this live stream from Cape Town. I'd like to think that Gideon and Louis and Sindile are there as well. Dumo is floating around here somewhere. Dumo, where are you? Yeah, there's Dumo, right? Can you stand up, please, Dumo, so that people can see you? Dumo's also on our candidate list. Katlego's not with us here this evening. But all of us, tomorrow, we're excited. The response that we've had, just the sheer outpouring of enthusiasm that all of us have had, I have never seen the like of it, ever. The idea that a political party just generates so much enthusiasm, it's enthusiasm at the level of the purple cow is a trusted friend. The purple cow is a person that you want to hang out with. The purple cow is a person that you want to buy drinks for. All of those things come together. We've had messages of support coming from various parts of the world, and one of the messages that really, frankly, moved me to tears was a person who is currently working in the UK, and she sent a message saying that she drove 6 hours, 3 hours to London and 3 hours back, just in order to put her cross next to us. And I have not seen any of the other parties generating anywhere near the level of love for this brand. I think we've started something that's really important here. It's something that's taking our country forward. It's building messages that all of us as South Africans can relate to together. There's nothing in terms of pointing fingers at around what's wrong with our country. We all know what's wrong with our country. We all know who's to blame for what's wrong with our country, but we're focused on solutions. We're focused on going forward. And if we can actually turn that into a movement that actually sticks, that people get come to know and love and claim as their own, I think that we've got our country back. So thank you once again to every single one of you, and for those of you that I may have left out, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. K. Just to end off, I think it's important to state that it's good to become muscular about the principles that we hold dear. A lot of people have looked at our principles and they say, I love 8 of them, but not these 2. If you change, I would vote for you. We say, no. Our principles are firm, and we are firm on our principles. It is very important to stand firm on what we believe. And we believe that a lot of people believe in the principles that we espouse, and we believe that those principles should be fought for. In a democracy, rights are not secured at all. Every day is a fight to protect those rights and to ensure that they carry on long after we are not here. So if this is the first political step to that, we are all very, very happy to have you on board. Remember, vote for principles, not promises. Thank you very much. Oh, that's true, that's true. And we are happy to take questions, actually. So if anyone has something to ask, please just put up your hand and I'll be glad to answer, or one of us will be glad to answer. Yes, sir.
How do we make sure that politicians are accountable to the voters?
Well, there are various ways to do that. Isolate them and say that they are not performing their duties as a civil servant, because that's essentially what a politician is, right? You're a civil servant to the people that you're supposed to represent, not to the party. In South Africa, it's been, the inverse is true these days. Important to point it out, important to make sure other people know, and most importantly, actually, you just require an activist MP to make sure that people are aware who's doing their job and who isn't.
I think the gentleman in question is actually hoping for a more substantial answer, which I will now give him. I think essentially we've been discussing the entire concept of direct democracy, which is a way of holding politicians personally accountable by, in effect, making them sign legally binding pledges that will allow you to dismiss them from office through, obviously, a legal process, in the event of them actually not complying with it. And I think that there's a lot of merit in doing this, because right now we elect politicians, and then we do not hear of them for 5 years. There's zero accountability. You try picking up the phone to them and saying, what are you doing about X, Y, and Z? And they turn around and say, well, if you can get hold of them, we're going to submit it through committees and so forth, and then 5 years later they pitch up and stuff doesn't happen. I think that we haven't yet canvassed this among our 10 candidates, but I think that we certainly are in broad agreement on the subject of accountability. So certainly I think that none of us have any objection whatsoever in terms of signing pledges of performance that are guaranteeing that we are going to be doing X, Y, and Z. And in the event of us not holding to those promises, well, because we've signed a legally binding contract with our voters, I'm pretty sure that our voters won't hesitate to take us to court and force us to step down. Neil?
Yeah. Just to add to that, there's a very common phrase, I'm sure we are all very familiar with it, is be the change that you want to see, right? So essentially, one of the things that we have done or we have adopted is we will lead the, in practice and show everyone else what needs to be done. And what I mean by this is we are probably the only party that was publishing and broadcasting all donations that were coming in. And so we were not just saying that everybody needs to declare who's donating to them. We led it in practice. So subsequently, it was only a matter of time before we saw one of the other smaller parties do that. So you may not be able to convince them by words, but we sure as hell will be making sure that they are accountable by making sure that we hold ourselves accountable to you first. Then everybody will be under pressure to do what is right if you are doing what is right yourself.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have said that we'll do at least one weekly town hall on YouTube on a Saturday, just to give feedback on what has happened in Parliament that week. So expect a lot of other parties to miraculously come up with the same idea very, very soon. Any other questions? Three, two, 1, 0. Oh, there you go. 1.
Will you be wearing purple in Parliament?
To paraphrase Big Jagger, I see a purple rose and I want to paint it black. I think most people who know me know that pretty much on a daily basis. In fact, Roman, do you mind just holding this for a second? So essentially what I wear every single day of my life, except rare weekends, is exactly what I'm wearing right now, which are black jeans and a black t-shirt, and I carry a black jacket. And the reason behind that is that I never have to think about what I have to wear in the morning. So if you want to know whether we make an exception to that rule, yes, the exception is going to be that I'm going to make sure that my black t-shirts going forward have exactly Sarah's work of art right on the front of the T-shirt.
Well, personally, I actually DM'd Julius Malema quite a few times because he had a wonderful purple suit, as can be seen, over there at a wedding in Mauritius a few years ago. But unfortunately, I think he's busy campaigning. He hasn't answered me quite yet as to who designed it for him. But once I have those details, purple suede all the way to Parliament.
Look, before I became all serious and everything, I was really into fashion. Ask anybody that was with me at Technicon Pretoria, now Tshwane University of Technology. I used to wear Spider-Man outfits. Probably the only one that had Spider-Man outfits. I've always loved color, for that matter. So you can rest and be assured that I've got a whole plan around how I'm going to coordinate my wardrobe with purple. You know, because yes, I've been known to, you know, back in the days when I used to have dreadlocks. So definitely I'll be playing around with purple, but I can't say it's a rule. We are not in this for populism or anything like that. You know, we embrace individualism. You know, so I know I have the freedom to just rock purple from top to bottom.
We are happy to take a few more questions if there are any. If not, we can just go back to drinking. All right, I think we'll end it there. Thank you again. You want to cut me off already?
No. I don't want to cut you off just before I allow you to finish off. But I'm really very pleased to be able to tell everyone present that my parents are actually here this evening. They're seated at the back. And my mother was part of the first Democratic Parliament in 1999. And so she's done her tour of duty. And I like to think that I'm following in her footsteps. Love you, Mother dearest.
Thank you, Chief Beef. So I think if there are no further questions, let's go back to drinking. Thank you so much for joining us. And on the live stream, thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.